Hi everyone, my name is Steph, this is the Novelty Corner and welcome back to my channel. Today I have a Books Beside My Bed video for you where I wrap up the last 7 days worth of reading. This has been the week of the Queer Lit Readathon and I have been trying to make sure that I am reading queer romances this week, obviously. I was not following the bingo board or the prompts, I was just going through anything that I happened to have that I was interested in reading, while also aligning it sort of with my Christmas/holiday themed stories as well as anything else that I wanted to pick up. I have to say I was also reading books for another reading project, so that's coming out in about a week's time. So there are some books that I'm not going to talk about in this video. But I started the week with From Snowball Fights to Hot Summer Nights by Wren which is the second book in the series that they are writing. And my goodness, this was just fun. So the series is called Misadventure and Mistletoe, and I absolutely adored the first book in the series. But this one follows Dancer who works for Santa. Santa is a business and it's run like such. There are employees and it's the off season for Christmas, and Dancer ends up filling in as a dancer at a strip club that is in need when one of the other dancers who is supposed to be performing for a charity event is injured. So he steps up and he goes to join in, and there he meets Candace, who is again another one of the dancers there, and they hit it off and they get along really great. And also Trevor, who was the bartender from the first book. Dancer and Trevor have feelings for one another that they have not communicated to each other, is also there. And the three of them just hit it off. They are all interested in each other, and initially it starts out as Dancer seeing both Candace and Trevor, but it really becomes clear that Trevor and Candace also have feelings for one another, and the three of them just have this gorgeous polyamorous relationship that I absolutely loved. There is ADHD rep in here, pansexual and bisexual rep, and demisexual rep, so yay. It's very low angst, it is novella length, so it's a great one to read if you're trying to fit in some shorter books before the holiday season. And then I picked up a book that I have been putting off for ages, mostly because it came out in my winter and it's very much a summer book, and it's How Do You Say I Do by Tal Bauer. So this was, I think it was the most recent release back in the middle of the year. And this is a queer romance about two men who meet in an airport bar. One is absolutely distraught because his fiancée has left him at the altar, and he decides to still go on his honeymoon. And there he meets Wyatt, who is from Texas. And Wyatt can't sit by and let Noel just drown his sorrows at the bar. He is gone to the wind, and Wyatt just gets him through the flight to Cancun. And they become friends over the course of a couple of days. They realize that there is an attraction between one another. They act on it, and then reality sets in for Noel and he disappears. And so the second half of the book is really how do they come back from that. There is a lot in here about settling in life and doing the same things that you do over and over again because you think that's what you have to do, because Noel is in a job that he thinks he loves, but he's forced to question whether it is something that actually even aligns with his morals and his ethics. And this comes up particularly when he is helping to organize the wedding of a very famous pop star, and he is still trying to rebuild his relationship with Wyatt. As always, it is written in Tal Bauer's beautiful style. It is very easy to fall into and just keep reading. It packs a huge emotional punch. Have tissues, just in case. I mean, it's Tal Bauer. I will content warning, there is mention of death of parents, which is historical off page, and also absentee parents, and there is also a lot of consumption of alcohol on the page, so if that's something that doesn't align with you, just be aware of that going into it. I also read You Exist Too Much by Zaina Arafat, who is a Palestinian author, I believe. I've had this book for a little while, so I've been meaning to pick it up, and I'm really glad that I did. It is not necessarily my usual style of book. It's quite hard-hitting and probably leans more lit fic than anything else, and it is about an unnamed protagonist who has a love addiction, amongst other things. She is bisexual and has anorexia and is dealing with disappointment from her mother and constantly finding that she can't stay in relationships because she sabotages them. Even if she's not meaning to, she just does it. And she ends up going into a program to try and help her cope with her love attachment/love addiction. And it's a very interesting story, and it's not something that I've read a lot of, so that was really interesting for me. It was really well written. Zaina Arafat has a great writing style, but yes, there's a lot of heavy topics dealt with in here, including some pretty frank conversations about cheating, bodily harm, dealing with anorexia and the subsequent issues with food. And I would be interested in reading more by this author in the future. So yeah, this was an interesting one to add to the lineup this week, but it did very much take me outside of my comfort zone, which was great. Then I read the next two books in the Heartbridge Christmas series by N.R. Walker. So there was Merry Christmas, Cupid. This is a small town queer romance about Gunter, who has moved to Heartbridge and is renovating a property there. His father has passed away, and he and his father used to come to Hartbridge and stay at the local B&B, which is featured in book 1. Gunter fell in love with the small town, so he decides that he's just going to move there. He's going to have a fresh start. He's going to fix up this house. And along the way, he meets Clay, who works at the local sawmill, and the two just hit it off straight away. And Clay ends up helping out with the renovations in various ways. And Clay has always been bisexual, but hasn't really known how to tell anyone, particularly his father, who he's really close with. And it's Gunter who helps him sort of sort through whether or not he wants to tell anyone and how he can tell them, and gives him that sort of support network to work through that process. And it was just lovely. This is another very low angst holiday romance if you're looking for one of those. And then Holiday Heartstrings came out only in the last month or so, I'm pretty sure, and it's the 4th book in the series. And this one is about Braith and Coulson. Coulson is the deputy sheriff in the town, and he's featured in some of the other books. And Braith is an Englishman who has come to town. He's a substitute teacher. He's been traveling around the US working as a substitute teacher for 2 years and just sort of getting to see America by actually living in various places. And he comes to Hartbridge and he just falls in love with the place. He's a kindergarten teacher, but as he enters town for the first time, he gets pulled over by Coulson because he's speeding, and he manages to babble his way out of a ticket. But Coulson is very intrigued by him. And so they keep running into each other and talking. And what we discover is Coulson is actually quite isolated in this town. He has a history where his entire family disowned him and haven't spoken to him in years. And so he's very deeply closeted because he doesn't want to feel rejection from people that he has found a home with in town. And a lot of the book is him processing that and working through that and realizing that the people that he calls his family in town do believe that unconditionally and support him. And then the second complication in the story obviously is that in order for Braith to stay in the US, he has to be working, and his contract at the school in Hartbridge is only for a limited time. So they are fighting this sort of clock that's running out. This one was a little bit more angsty than the previous one, but the whole thing was just gorgeous and lovely. And N.R. Wlaker, I just trust their writing so much. Like, implicitly, I will read anything that they write. I also picked up Totally Frosted by Zoey Indiana, which is another shifter speed dating romance. And this time the hero is, well, he's technically a bear shifter, but he's been cursed. So whenever he shifts into a gingerbread man. Anyway, there's some kind of plot in this story that, to be honest, I didn't quite follow because it was very short and packed into a tiny little novella about how the hero is forcibly recruited to investigate or infiltrate someone that's doing bad things. I don't know. Anyway, it's a really short story, and if you've read any of Zoey Indiana's books, you'll know exactly what you're in for. It's a fated mate story, and yet still not the most random book that I have read this year. All right, and then finally I read Wild Pitch by Cat Giraldo, which is the first book in the Dominating the Diamond series, which is a baseball sports romance. Can't say I ever thought I would read one of those, and I will be reading another one. Pretty much all of my friends who have read this have really loved it, so I was very much looking forward to reading it, and I have enjoyed Cat Giraldo's books in the past, so of course I was going to pick it up. This one is the story of Sierra, who is the first woman to be picked up by the major league. So she's playing in a men's team. She is a pitcher, and she ends up being traded to Mateo's team. Mateo is the team captain. He is a catcher, and he's in his 30s, and he knows that his time as a pitcher is severely limited. It's taken its toll on his body, and he is quite grumpy, but Sierra kind of gets through his defenses, and he really helps her to become a better pitcher, and she trusts him implicitly when previously she's obviously had some quite bad experiences in the other team that she was playing with, and where she has all of these walls up. And the two have this mutual attraction to one another. It is an age gap romance. And it also features BDSM elements. Sierra needs to be in control, so she is very much a dom in their sexual relationship. And he is okay with that. And some of those scenes are just top notch. There's also temperature play, sex toys, and pegging. That's always fun to see. But to be honest, I was really picking this up because I'd heard it had fantastic bisexual rep. Both our protagonists are bisexual, and their conversations around their past relationships are really interesting. Mateo's family have a really interesting dynamic because his ex-boyfriend is now dating his sister. But yeah, it was really fun, and I honestly did not see myself reading a baseball romance, and clearly I have, and I enjoyed it. So I'm looking forward to reading Outfield Assist, which is the second book in the series. So yes, those are the books that I've read this week. It was a good reading week. In the comments, I'd love to know if you've read any of these books or if you're planning on picking any of them up. Otherwise, feel free to leave a pride flag emoji down below, or your flag of choice. You pick, whatever you'd like to include. Otherwise, I hope that wherever you are in the world, you're staying safe and healthy, and I will see you in my next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye, everyone.